The reality is for Trump is he's caught between a rock and a very hard place in that if the judge says, okay, here's everything, right, then he's got a whole nother political problem, particularly if he's all up in the documents, all right? If the judge says no, then his base is mad at him because they expect him to override the judge and to just go out and release it anyway. How do you see this, landing? I guess, what are the circumstances in which, you can have the judge say a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or is it all of it?
Yeah, a couple things here. So one, as Simone was saying, the information that they're requesting isn't particularly new or novel. Right. It's going to be what was the basis for the indictment, which was made public years ago. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the judge probably isn't going to grant the request. There are only very limited circumstances in which you can release grand jury materials. And third, and I think this is the most important part, this administration doesn't want the request to be granted.
Right.
This is,
dirty secret.
Yeah, exactly. This is a really important legal issue with a lot of novel questions. The brief that they filed was 3.5 pages long, double-spaced. This is not an argument that was meant to win.
Can I ask you a question? They filed it in New York, but there seemed to be some indication that it might also file something similar in Florida. Do you have a sense of why that is?
Yeah. So they may have filed something under seal in Florida. We haven't confirmed that yet. But here's the really important thing, because that gets to that, is if that is a request for materials related to Ghislaine Maxwell's case, one of the reasons that you don't disclose grand jury materials is because it might be prejudicial to witnesses, to defendants, and to ongoing cases. There was a request for materials from the McCarthy era, the 1950s, that was denied because some of the witnesses were still alive. The Maxwell appeal is still going on. So it seems incredibly unlikely that a judge would grant that request.
And it's important to note she is literally sitting in jail as we speak. The crimes of Jeffrey Epstein were real. The victims were real. The conspiracy is all this other stuff that the White House helped whip up. Okay, this is what NBC News has reported on Donald Trump's Department of Justice order on Epstein, saying that it could create legal and ethical challenges. Brendan cited some of these under seal. Do the people who are calling in on talk radio care about these very technical legal roadblocks?
No, they definitely don't. They care about a few things. They care about the performance of Trump, and in particular, what he's doing on the stage. Him resisting any transparency played out from just their storytelling perspective as somehow he was doing something that was oppositional to what they said, was unexpected, and it seemed really unsettling for them, which made them angrier, and that's why you saw more pushback and violent pushback. The second he went out there and said, let's release the grand jury testimony, it immediately changes the perception. It brings the temperature down a lot. It doesn't make the story go away, because they want to see the dots that they can then connect. So they expect something, but they're not drawing a ton of nuance between the grand jury files, what is inside the FBI's records, they're not making any distinctions there. And you have to consider what he's doing at the same time. So he throws that out there, says, now we're gonna, it's this judge, and you know how those judges are. We better fight and take this away. We need them to release this from us. So they're the roadblock. We're gonna fight. So now I'm an advocate for transparency. And as he does that, he does a few other things. He drops this, he has the DNI go out there and drop some stuff about President Obama, somehow being involved in Russiagate. He then releases a bunch of files about Martin Luther King. He's like, do you see how transparent I am? Look at all the things that I've been doing. So does it make it go away? No, it doesn't, by any means. It's down to a simmer. There are some people, though, that are not buying it. So I think one of the significant pieces to consider is, and what are the major influencers saying? Somebody like Andrew Torba that runs Gab, which is an important part of the right-wing ecosystem, says, don't buy this. Do not buy into this. This is
because they want, what, a data dump?
They want a data dump.
They want a WikiLeaks.
They do.
They want a WikiLeaks. They want it all on the middle of the table, and they can go through it.
Precisely. And so the more sophisticated players that are not locked in, like the Ben Shapiro's or even the Steve Bannon, who has his own complications here, because he's sitting on the largest trove of Jeffrey Epstein stuff.
15 hours.
15, yes. He's sitting on 15 hours and yet is out there calling for transparency from Donald Trump. But he's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to be an advocate. So everyone has their own stakes, but the majority of the talkers out there, they want the data dump so that they can be the one to be the big storyteller.
And he can't afford to have the data dump at all. I mean, to your very important legal point, because you have someone who's sitting in prison, Ghislaine is still sitting in prison. She's appealing. That case is still going on. You're not going to open this case up, redact those names, and put it on the street. Trump knows that. His Department of Justice knows that. But it's interesting, as the New York Times report, Mr. Trump has concentrated power within the Justice Department in Washington in 2 of the offices, has elevated loyalists with little prosecutorial experience, leading to confusion and plummeting morale within the rank and file. His moves raise the question of what exactly a U.S. attorney is empowered to do, which is kind of why I started the question the way I did, beyond serving Mr. Trump's chosen agenda. Because he's got all these loyalists behind him, because of what Angelo just put on the table, what his political personal motivations are, who gets caught in this trap? Is it the poor little lawyer who's sitting there having to go in front of a judge and argue something he knows damn well he's not going to win?
Absolutely. You know, I still have friends in government, and they are miserable. You know, it's not just that they're having their cases killed for political reasons. It's not just that they're being forced to take political, untenable decisions. It's that they're destroying the credibility of the Department of Justice. And that is the only asset that the Department of Justice has.
Destruction with judges, with other lawyers?
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah, exactly. All of the
above.
above. You know, the ultimate power of the Department of Justice, it's not like NASA or the Department of Defense. It doesn't have rocket ships or armies or anything like that. The only thing it has is its ability to convince judges and juries about the truth of things. And when you have such obviously political decisions being made, that credibility gets eviscerated.